we can pass that on afterwards. So don't panic about exactly what you see on the screen, because you also have the videos to follow up with. That sound good? Okay, thanks. I see some head nods on there. All right. So this message on the screen. Oh, you know what? Actually, let me switch so Sam can share her screen.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to the back end of Toast Web. So let's make sure everyone has the ability to see this here. Looks good?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So what we will go over first are going to be 3 different topics in the back end of Toast Web. So I have created an employee in the traditional lab named Maggie Manager. So although I'm not Maggie, I will be acting as Maggie as our manager today as we go over how to add in employees, how to adjust and create tax rates, and also how we can adjust our prices using a really helpful tool called the Bulk Price Editor. So first things first that we will do is talk about employees. So as a manager, or whatever your job may be within the franchise, employees are going to be very important, right? So we want to make sure that we know how to add a new employee or adjust and edit employees that already exist. So we'll always do this through the back end of Toast Web. That is what we're looking at right here. So this is our home base, our home plate, whatever you want to call it here. And we're going to start by navigating over to this left-hand side rail where we see the word employees. So notice my mouse right here circling employees. We'll touch on that. And then we will, you guessed it, go right into this employees section. So we're going to follow the leader of employees here. And this is going to bring us to an overview of all of our active employees. So this is, again, within the traditional lab. Your location that you're logged into will look a little bit different based off of the employees there. So we can scroll through and we can see some basic information about each employee. We see their first name, their last name, and then any job, or if an employee has multiple jobs at your location, they'll appear right here as well. Before we go in and add in a brand new employee, I do just want to talk about how we can edit an employee that already exists. So over here on the right-hand side, we see this pencil tool. So again, I'm logged in under Maggie Manager, so we can continue and edit this employee. So once we select this pencil here, this will bring us into Maggie's jobs and permissions. So maybe we want this employee to also have access to another job at your location. We could go ahead and select the job in which this employee could also have access to clock in under. So if I wanted to have Maggie be a GM, but also a cashier, I could go ahead and assign this job to Maggie, and then we would, of course, save in this bottom right-hand corner here. So what that means is any permission that is associated with the job cashier, she will also have those permissions. So Maggie will have cashier permissions, such as opening and closing a cash drawer, as well as those general manager permissions assigned to that job. So if we wanted to give any of our employees another job to clock in and out of, this is where we would do it. Remember, we just pressed on that pencil icon, and that brought us to the jobs that we can assign multiple to. If we scroll down, we see this permissions quick guide and all of the permissions that live in the back end of Toast. So again, when we create a job, that's when we're adding the permissions. So every job comes with permissions once you assign it to an employee. If we wanted to override permissions for a specific employee or multiple employees, that's where we come into the employee specific permissions. So these are things that we could go in and maybe Maggie didn't have access to before, and we want this employee to have access to now. So we see this a lot of times with maybe a cashier employee that is strictly a cashier. Maybe we want to give them some manager permissions. Maybe we want to give them access to voiding. So permission 3.7 and 3.8. We could go in for that employee that's maybe a cashier only that doesn't usually have access to perform voids. And we could override that. So we could give this employee a couple permissions that are one-off, you could say, from the regular cashier job. So it's important to keep in mind, even though an employee has a job attached, we can always customize that through the permissions. There are over 100 permissions. So that's definitely a lot to remember, which is why we have this permissions quick guide. This is going to bring us to the permissions reference guide. This will break every single permission down. It will let you know exactly what it entails and maybe who you should assign it to in a general restaurant concept style. So feel free to utilize this permissions reference guide. This is going to live on Toast Central. So if you're familiar with our Toast resources, one of them is Toast Central, kind of like what we like to call the Google of Toast. So it's a major search engine that you can look many things up, all Toast related. So that's where this permissions reference guide will live. And this is how we can edit an employee. So we also have individual things like that basic section, which we'll get to in just a moment. If you notice this pop-up appearing, it's because I didn't save my work. So I made an edit. I allowed Maggie to also be a cashier, but I didn't actually select save. So just for our example, I won't save it, but we can leave that page. So we always want to save everything we're doing in the back end of Toast Web. If we don't, that pop-up will appear. Toast will make sure that you save your work before you actually move on to the next page. So this is also where we can edit our employees' information. So if we wanted to maybe update their passcode or their email, we could do that here. Within the corporate world and many franchises, as we have on this call, this restaurant access is going to allow us to pick and choose what restaurants this employee has access to editing and looking at. So in this case, my employee Maggie manager has the Wetzel's Pretzels group, but also that individual location of the traditional lab. So we'll take a look at that in just a minute as well. But it is important to know if you need to edit an employee, that is how you can do it. Just select that pencil and it will bring you right into that individual employee. So let's just take it a step back and see if there's any questions about that. I do see the chat has some messages, so I'm just gonna.
I think I was able to get all those regarding
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Nicholas. Awesome. So again, as I'm going through the training, you can post those questions in the chat just so we don't derail anything, and we'll get to the live Q&A at the end. So Nicholas will answer those while I'm training and I'll answer them while he's training. So again, that was how we can edit our employees. So let's talk about briefly how we can add in a brand new employee. So again, employees are going to be really important for all of our GMs to go in and add in the back end of Toast Web for them to then appear on the terminal for them to clock in and clock out of. If we want to add in a new employee, all we need to do is select this plus add new employee. So this blue rectangle button is going to give us the option on the right-hand side here to create a new employee and create a new account for them. So once we fill out this information, they will appear within all of the other active employees that we just scrolled through right here on the left-hand side. The first thing to take note of when we're adding in a new employee is the option of, do we want them to create an account in the back end of Toast Web? The way I like to think of this is, are they an hourly position or a salaried position? So most likely a salaried position, much like all of you, or general manager, will need access to the back end of Toast Web. So maybe they need to come in and add employees like we are doing right now. Whereas if we do not invite them to create an account, maybe this is your cashier that you're creating an employee's profile for. They just need access to the terminal. They don't need access to Toast Web. They don't need to come in and add new menu items, things like that. So if we are inviting an employee to create an account, yes or no, that will always be our first step. Let's leave it on no here. And let's just say we're adding in maybe a cashier employee. We will then want to go in and add the employee's personal information. So things such as their first name, their last name, maybe a chosen name. Also their phone number, email address, and the POS access code. So the POS access code is the 3 to 8 digit numeric code that every employee will need to use to clock in and clock out of the point of sale. This is the first time we will assign the employee that access code upon hiring. But again, we can always go in and adjust that through that pencil tool and adjust the access code there. So maybe you just put in a code that comes to mind, you know, as you're going in and adding this employee and they say, hey, I would really like if my access code could be the last 4 digits of my phone number, or something I can remember more easily. Then you can go ahead and change that at any point, again, by just coming into ToastWeb and selecting that pencil tool and adjusting that there. Once you've added in the access code, this is where we will assign an employee the job that they will be working. So again, we see that there are 3 jobs already created in the traditional labs backend of Toast. So we can choose, is this employee going to be a general manager? Is this employee going to be a cashier? Or is this going to be a team member? So once we select cashier, once we save this employee, they will get all of the permissions of a cashier that were previously created when we added in the job. So those will go hand in hand. Remember, we can always adjust those and have the employee have individual permissions if we wish to do so, but they will automatically get those permissions right away that come with the cashier job. Let's say we wanted to override the pay of a cashier. We could do this right here. Maybe your cashiers make $15 an hour, but this individual employee will make 16 or 17. You could add in the pay for this specific employee right here as well. If an employee were to be hired and have multiple jobs, we could go ahead and add a new job, as we see right here, plus add new job if they will be able to clock in and choose which job they'll be clocking in for. And then once we have added in the jobs for our employee, again, we will want to save and select add. So once we add, that will save this employee to our active employees section of the employees page right here. I do just want to quickly call out, if we were to invite an employee to create an account in the back end of Toast, it looks exactly the same. I just want to make a little shout out here and a pro tip for the email address. We want to make sure this is accurate, because the way in which an employee will be asked to create an account in the back end of Toast is through an email. So unlike, you know, the phone number, if that's not completely accurate, that's okay. We can always adjust that. But for the email address, we want to make sure if you are inviting an employee to create an account in the back end of Toast, that email address is 100% accurate. So they will get the invitation via email and can start making their account. So when we're adding an employee, same steps for creating an account or not creating an account for that employee, depending on what we choose here. Now, I know we talked about active employees, but we do also have something called archived employees. So let's say an employee is no longer working at your location and it is your responsibility to archive them. We can do this by selecting this downward facing arrow directly next to the pencil within this actions section here. So this downward facing arrow is going to act as an archive. We've noticed, and we might notice a little bit more throughout the training today, that everything in Toast is cloud-based. So we can always archive and restore employees the same way we do menu items and different levels of the menu hierarchy. So we can always bring an employee back if we did archive them, but let's say they're no longer working with us. We can select that archive button. It will ask to make sure that you're sure you would like to archive. And then from the active page of our employees' profiles, that employee will actually move to the archived section. So again, if an employee was archived that we need to bring back, the same way we archive, we can unarchive by selecting that now upwards facing arrow. So an employee can be in an active stage or an archive stage. Just something to note there, so you don't have to go through and create the employee's profile all over again. Will save you some time, as I know we are all very busy. So that is a little bit about employees. So we just talked about how to edit an employee's profile, how to add a new employee, and how to archive and unarchive employees. So that was our first section within Toast Web. Next, we're going to talk about taxes. So again, when it comes to taxes, these are going to be specific to all of your locations, depending on where your location is